and then, so it is recording, and then I am going to go live on my Facebook page. 1 second. Some reason it's not letting me go live. Hold on 1 second, guys. Just let me get this live stream thing together, and we'll be all set. Okay. Again, I definitely appreciate all of you gentlemen for joining today. It should be a really good conversation. It's a very timely conversation at the same time. So just as a couple of housekeeping items, if you guys can just, if you're using your computer, just make sure your phones are muted so you're not distracted by that. That'd be great. All right, here we go. All right, I'm going live on my Facebook page, guys. All right, we want to welcome everybody. Thank everybody for tuning in. This is the Buffalo Association of Black Journalists Town Hall panel for our Black Male Media Project. My name is Jamil Cruz. I am a member of the Buffalo Association of Black Journalists, and just want to tell you a little bit about what we have going on here today. The National Association of Black Journalists is on a mission to combat the negative portrayals of Black men in the media. For the third consecutive year, actually for the fourth consecutive year, the organization will host its Black Male Media Project as an avenue to empower and inspire Black men to reclaim their narratives. The organization has been dedicated to the advocacy of Black journalists worldwide. The Black Male Media Project was created as a safe space to foster discussions surrounding everything from the need for more diversity and inclusion in newsrooms to the improvement of Black male representation. Part of today's discussion will take a deep dive into how Black men are portrayed in the news coverage. The event is also utilized to align Black men with mentoring and networking opportunities. So as part of this global event, NAB chapters from across the country will host workshops, panels, and forums, including right here in the city of Buffalo. The organization hopes that the movement transcends beyond the physical safe spaces that they've created as part of the event and encourages individuals to connect and spread awareness about the efforts digitally through the use of the hashtag Inspire Black Men on social media. So with all of the unrest that we are seeing today and across the country, today's conversation is a timely one. And to lead us in the conversation today, we have an incredible panel of amazing Black men, both young and seasoned. On the panel today, we have Lorenzo Alexander from the Buffalo Bills. We have Vaughters, Buffalo broadcast legend from WIVB Channel 4 and the Vice President of Broadcast for the Buffalo Association of Black Journalists. We have Jason Amos, he's a business owner and father here in the city of Buffalo. We have Daniel Robertson, who's a program manager for the Breaking Barriers Boys and Men of Color initiative. And he brought some amazing special guests with him. We have Antonio, Gene, Xavier, Dwayne, and Jason from the Breaking Barriers Youth Leadership Council. And to moderate today's discussion, we have Sir Aimezing, who is a motivational speaker, social influencer, and the founder of The Shift. It's a company designed to inspire, educate, and motivate the youth. So, gentlemen, again, we want to thank you so much for taking part in this conversation today. And we, just looking forward to having a really great discussion. So with that, I will pass the floor to our moderator, Mr. Amos, and sir, the floor is yours.
Alrighty, thank you again, Jamil. Thank you to the NABJ for putting this together and bringing all these powerful people in this room to have this conversation. I want to start by us talking about some Black males in the media. And I guess we'll start with the young men. But name just one person in the media, one Black male that you have looked up to just as an inspirational figure, as a role model. And let's start with that positive side. We all go around. I'll go last. But just one person in front of the camera in the media sphere that has been a role model to you.
I think for me, it would be Dr. Umar Johnson for the past few years. I think his ideas and his work so far is good. It's very influential for me.
Thank you, Dorian.
For me, it's funny, I've been listening to Umar Johnson recently, very good. But for me, I think the most inspirational black male in the media right now is Van Jones from CNN. I think he makes some crazy points, and sometimes I'm surprised that he doesn't get kicked off because he be making some controversial things, but he calls it like it is, and I 100% respect that.
Thank you, Xavier.
For me, it's definitely gonna have to be the legendary Reverend Al Sharpton. He's been a monumental key to the movement so far and has been in the past. And, he's constantly moving to help us progress with our lives so we can be safe. So it definitely have to be Reverend Sharpton.
Thank you, Dwayne.
I would have to say J. Cole. He's been in a lot of protests, and he's getting involved in the community and just backing up everything that's going on in the African community.
Thank you, Jason.
I'm gonna be honest. I haven't really been watching the TV or like that, and to be completely honest, I haven't seen a lot of role models that I feel accurately do more than just say prayers and keep it pushing. But I can, if I'm gonna be fair, I can say that at least people are trying.
Thank you, Jordan.
Yeah, I can add to it as well. Obviously, being in the sports world, I actually think about a few. I guess I'm fortunate that way, but I think about Jason Reed, that's out of Washington. Think about Mike Jones and also Kimberly Martin, three African-American journalists that covered me on various teams, and they're only speaking out, obviously, in the sports world, but also doing stuff locally to help their movement and collectively coming together by creating forums, even like this one, within their own group and figure out ways to leverage their power collectively.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Al or Daniel?
So for me,
I'm sorry, go ahead. I can wait. Go ahead.
No, I always give the nod to my elders.
Okay, thank you. Let me just say, I am among the baby boomer generation, and I don't have to tell you guys there is a growing generation gap between boomers and millennials. So the people that I looked up to are older, and you probably haven't heard of them, but I will tell you contemporarily, a former coworker of mine, Jerika Duncan, who is now working for CBS. She covers so many very timely topics, and I'm very proud every time I see her appear on the CBS Evening News. But I'm here because of pioneers that came before me, such as Max Robinson, who some of you younger guys probably have never heard of. There are a few others, but they blazed the trail that you may be familiar with Brian Gumbel. He's a contemporary of mine, and we had to really work hard in order to get to where we are now, and hopefully we have inspired some other folks who have chosen journalism as a profession.
Thank you, Al.
So for me, I would also say Brian Gumbel. I would also give a nod to Madison Carter, who's doing a lot locally in our area to ensure that we're covered in a way that most other organizations, news, kind of don't cover us. And I'll take a different angle and also kind of say, from a cover standpoint, I love the way that LeBron kind of voices his issues voices his opinion on issues that impact us and how he steps to the forefront when things are going on.
Thank you, Daniel. Over to you, Jason.
Oh, okay. I think that for a while now, ever since his huge gift to the graduating class of Morehouse, I've been following Robert Smith a lot closer. And that was an incredible act of charity and giving. And I think that, especially with him being in private equity and me having a background in finance and investing, somebody that I really look to, and I appreciate seeing some of his commentary on social issues as well.
Thank you, Jason, and thank you everyone for providing those personal answers, because I think it depends on your age range. It depends on your perspective. For me, I think I'm the only 90s baby in here. So when I think about different Black male in media, I think about all those great talk shows during the 90s. So I'm thinking about Uncle Phil. Even though it was from a TV and film aspect, it was very it empowered me in a lot of ways to think about Uncle Phil or Carl Winslow or Steve Harvey on the Steve Harvey show. Smart Guy, which was a young Black man who was super smart. Those different images all had a major impact on how I looked at things and viewed life going forward. And now with us being in 2020 and with everything that's going on, let's go back around the circle in that same order. Talk about, let's say, two things that you like that you're seeing in the media about Black men, and then one thing that you don't like that you're seeing us being portrayed in the media.
Where are we starting at?
Let's start with, what was the order? It was Dorian, Xavier. Let's go in that same order.
What I like about Black men's portrayal in the media so far in 2020, I believe, is, it's hard to say with all that's going on, but I think for me, it would be the sort of I would say the graduating class and more of the celebrities taking a stand for what's going on and providing and donating to communities to help out. What I don't like, which is a whole lot of, is the portrayal of, the thugs or the stealing, of course, the disproportionate cases in COVID-19 for African American males and different people of color. So I think that's what my viewpoint of it.
Thank you, Dorian.
Me next. I think what I like is that you have more Black people, as like what you said, in the media, getting more attention. I feel like you're hearing a lot of, I think we never heard we're getting this many Black voices, people of color in the media talk about the issues of what's going on. So I think that's good. What is not good is that we're still dominated by a predominantly white, wealthy, structured media. And so you get really bad perspectives on how like the vast majority of Blacks are portrayed. And like Dorian said, we're being called thugs, criminals, looters, while at the same time, a couple weeks ago, white people were protesting about getting their haircuts and stuff, and they were portrayed as nothing but angry, but they're just upset. They're a little mad at what's going on. So that's what I have to say. What's bad.
Thank you, Xavier.
For me, it's definitely going to have to be the fact that a lot of us, the millennials, were getting out into the communities and actually advocating for ourselves. Before all of this happened, we really weren't speaking up for our rights, and seeing how a lot of us, people my age or younger, are speaking about their rights and how they feel, it shows that we're moving in the right direction. Things I don't like, the portrayal of how we're destroying our own communities, which in some cases it's been proven that a lot of the looters are not even from the city or from the city that's being affected by the looting. they're from outside of the city or, you know, wherever they're from. And I don't like how they're saying that the people who live in the communities are destroying the communities, because in most cases, it hasn't been that.
Thank you, Dwayne.
What I like is how everyone in the sports industry is backing up the death of George Floyd, and how we're all being brutalized by police, and how they're just using their force just to belittle ourselves. But what I don't like, to back up what Dwayne said, is how we're using the death of George Floyd to terrorize our community and just destroy it instead of making it stronger.
Thank you, Jason.
I think it's my turn, and some of the positive aspects, I will say there are more young Black athletes that are speaking up, making their points heard and their positive messages on behalf of their communities. We are seeing more positive civic leadership, and just let me say, going back many years, we did have a number of Black politicians, but they were pretty much just following along what their white counterparts would say, and they really they were invisible politicians. More of our Black politicians now are speaking up, and they have positive messages. Again, I can just echo that. And I will also say news coverage, and you know, it's kind of self-serving, but at Channel 4, we are getting into the community and doing more positive stories. A co-worker of mine, you're familiar with, Shannon Smith. If there's something happening, you know, as far as the hip hop community, the young community, Shannon is our station, white owned, predominantly white, and she's in there just punching away, getting the co-workers. If it's a good news story, whether it's Black, white, whatever color or religion it is, they tend to go after the positive stories also. So I'm very positive about at least what we're doing at Channel 4.
Thank you, Al. We've got another student. We're gonna just finish this round of this question.
As far as positives, I would say I like to see the activism all throughout the community around the globe, not just in the U.S. It seems like the young people are finally using our voice, and people are finally starting to listen to us. Unfortunately, it had to be through violent means, but peaceful actions, but getting through. So, you know, if a child feel like he's being hurt, he throws a tantrum, and this is our tantrum, and it's what people decide to listen to. So it is what it is for that. As far as negative aspects, I'm gonna agree with my friends and brothers Dwayne and Jason stated, as far as the way the media is trying to pin all the negativity from this movement on Black people, as if is completely irrelevant to what other groups, when I say other groups, I mean white people, are participating in regarding this this movement, and as if it's completely like, as if they can't like understand, even if it was only Black people rioting, why they would riot. I saw a post online. I feel like it accurately stated the climate is kind of like in school, where if you was a kid getting picked on, the teacher would never acknowledge the bully until the day you decide to fight back, and then all of a sudden all the drama and issues that caused on it fell on you, as if there was no catalyst that led you to that point.
Thank you, Jordan.
Did you want me to
Daniel, I think you're up. Yep.
So I love the work that Color of Change is actually doing around, you know, narrative change. I love the fact that we have more athletes, more politicians actually stepping to the plate, voicing their issues, voicing their opinions on the issues and everything that's going on. One of the things that I haven't liked surrounding everything that's going on with George Floyd, and we see this a lot, is how the media will pick up some totally unrelated backstory to the individual or the victim and try to push that information out. So I don't like that when that happens.
Right. And I would agree on that as far as the positive. I think it's been more, this has created more opportunity for people to want to shine lights on what athletes have been doing. And obviously through social media and other avenues, guys just have a bigger voice and or feel more, either they're fed up or at least feel more freedom to speak out and don't feel kind of sheltered. So I love that aspect of guys really stepping up and being seen in leadership roles around the country. And then I would also say the negative aspect of it is, as Daniel just said, as far as finding those stories to make it, to try to justify the reason of murdering our black men or women at any point in time that it's kind of taking place. They figure out a reason to try to justify it instead of changing their mentality and their hearts.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Jason, can you finish this up?
Sure. I'm really enjoying everything from fellow graduate Kenya Barris from Clark Atlanta University in Blackish. I think that being able to see that representation of a black family whenever I do catch the show is definitely warms my heart. I appreciate the accurate portrayals, the good, the bad sides of everyday life of being an African-American family. The things that I don't like, again, are just some things the other gentleman in the panel already touched on, is just the continued representation of us as one-dimensional. And I think that in order for that to stop, we have to continue to do the things that require us to tell our own stories. And that's why, again, I like what Kenya Barris does so much with Blackish and Grownish, to just be able to tell our own stories from our own perspectives and point of views.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jason. I want to pivot a bit and I want to ask this question directly to Lorenzo. And in the meantime, those of you who are not a part of the panel, please feel free to leave some questions in the chat that we can approach and attack. Lorenzo, there was a situation that came out this week with Drew Brees.
Right.
Drew Brees made a statement about the flag, and then there was some pushback on it. Can you speak on behalf of the whole situation when it comes to the national anthem?
Well, obviously, I don't know Drew Brees at all very well, but I do know guys that he's played with, whether it's DeMario Davis, Ben Watson, Mike Thomas. And so for me, and we also had a situation in Buffalo, right? You think about Jake Fromm. For me, I thought Drew Brees' comments were way more egregious because he's been in the league, he's been in the locker room with these guys. He was around in 2017, and so I know they had conversations that occurred during that time to let him know what the narrative should have been. And he had a great opportunity to use his platform and his privilege to back up his teammates. And obviously he failed, right? But I know guys have also came out in support of his apology, so whether or not people want to accept it, I'm going to accept it because I know those guys know him better than I do. And so I'm relying on their wisdom and their relationship to kind of move forward in that. Because I do think, during this time, there is a lot of pain and anger. And when people speak out, even if we don't agree with it, and Drew, I think, was very aware because he didn't learn something overnight that he didn't know already. But just in general.
Nigger.
Oh, somebody. Just in general, we immediately lash out. And so I love the message as far as trying to correct people, but I think it's also we have to be aware of how we do it and not necessarily do it out of our fear and our pain, but out of love and trying to move forward for our people, because anger and fear only motivates more anger and fear. And so I think the way some of his guys actually approached him, got obviously with him, changed his mindset. That's something that we have to kind of continue to do. And I know it gets tiring. We've been doing it for a long, long, long time. And I think that speaks to people's different methodology as far as how to fix it and how to move forward. But for me, and with my faith and relationships and some of the things I've seen in my own experience and my own walk, I think that's the best way as far as moving forward, is just seeing it like somebody mentioned a child. You got to correct it over and over and over, because a lot of these people living in ignorance. And it's just the way our country is. It's segregated, and they just don't have the experience. They don't have the empathy, and they won't until you really speak to it over and over and over like a 2-year-old. And that's the most frustrating part, but hopefully something good comes out of it. Obviously, we saw Drew address President Trump, who he has a relationship with. And so maybe, obviously, hopefully he's not there any longer after November, but during these next couple of months, maybe he can challenge him in a way that I wouldn't be able to because I don't have a relationship with Trump. So we'll see what happens moving forward, and if he can leverage some of his white privilege and star power to really help the movement as he says he wants to do.
Thank you, Lorenzo. I know we got a question there, but I wanted to ask a question in regards to the grand scheme to Al. As a seasoned panelist, can you give us some insight and advice, because you've been around the block a few times, so these situations aren't necessarily new, which everyone in here can attest and agree upon. These aren't new situations. So what is your advice to the less seasoned individuals on how to just keep at it on a consistent basis and make sure that we are depicted in the right way? You're muted right now.
Unmute.
Still muted.
Got it. Sorry.
We're good.
Conversation was going so well, I forgot that I was muted. But I think you nailed it. It takes perseverance. It takes a lot of patience. And that's the key to success for just about anything. But, you know, as you pointed out, I've been around the block a few times, and, you know, you have doors slammed in your face one after another. I mean, when I look at when I go back and think about all the places that I applied for jobs and I was turned down, and places that I've gone to try to, you know, in this business, it's a lot of times it's who you know. You get your good stories from certain people, and if you don't know those folks, you know, when you ask them for an interview or ask them for, you know, the real news, and, you know, you're just another person, you get turned down and then you turn around and walk away, and somebody else who is maybe better known, has a better relationship, and they get the real story. You know, you really feel disrespected. And there are times when, you know, you get disrespected. You got to know when to speak up and when not to speak up. There are certain times when you may be disrespected, and you have to think, is this the battlefield I want to die on? Or is speaking up in this case, will it mean something? Will this person actually accept what I'm saying? And I can tell you from my experience, you know, because I do consumer stories for Channel 4, and there are times when I go out, and these are really good stories that people really need to know something about. And when I go to do the interview, I can see the look on the person's face that I'm interviewing. This is somebody that I am helping, and the look on their face is like, why do I have to talk to this black man? And I let them know, you know, if you want me to help you and your story can help a whole lot of people out there, then we're going to talk, and we're going to talk. And I get the story. I mean, I've actually gone down in the Southern Tier, and I've had, you know, somebody would let the word slip right to my face. So what am I going to do? You know, pack up my gear, walk away, and say, you know, this person doesn't respect me, and so that's the end of that. So you got to know, I guess, you know, it's like Kenny Rogers said, when to hold them and when to fold them. But it's perseverance. You got, if you see a path, you stick with it. It has potholes in it. You know, it might even have a couple of down trees that are in the way that you got to get over. The perseverance and the patience.
Thank you, Al. Thank you for providing that insight. We did have a question in here from our friend Charles, who asked, how do you feel about Candace Owens? Xavier, you responded quickly, so we'll pass it over to you.
Does anyone else know who Candace Owens is? I've heard of her. Yeah, so basically she's a black woman, political commentator, and a strong supporter of Trump. She has controversial, I guess some would consider controversial views on like police brutality and race relations. And to me, to be honest, it doesn't seem like she's really that serious about her beliefs, because number one, she was, I heard she used to be a Democrat like just a couple years ago, and now all of a sudden switched to have this whole new ideology. So with me, it doesn't seem like she's serious about her beliefs, and to be honest, she sometimes don't seem that intelligent in what she believes in. So that's why I really don't take her seriously. Now it's not that her, because she's a conservative. I have nothing against Black conservatives. If you have a different like ideology, that if you're serious about it, I have no problem with that. But with her, it doesn't seem like she's that serious.
Thank you, Xavier. I have a question for you, Daniel. And with everything that happened with George Floyd, you are a mentor, you're a leader, you're a father. There's young men that are on this panel because of the work that you've been able to do. I'll say this, I know how it made me feel having mentees watching that happen to George Floyd. So how did it make you feel when that video dropped and you've got these young men that you're leading and trying to instill so much encouragement, power, knowledge, and strength, and those situations can still occur?
Knew you was gonna hit me with the deep question. So I think about the ways that you kind of just described me, right? So I'm also a son, right? So when you hear the words, you hear somebody, begging for their mom, I'm thinking like, man, that could have been me calling out for my mom. That could have been me, period. Imagine if that was me laying on that ground and my daughter's watching that on Facebook, it hurt, it cut deeply. We've had this discussion with our young men on some of our calls. So I would be interested to kind of hear their views on it. It was a tough thing to watch, especially considering I'm sure in that officer's mind when he heard the words "I can't breathe," it had to trigger something because it wasn't the first time that we've seen this. It wasn't the first time that the nation heard those words from a Black man that was being brutalized by police officers. It makes you fearful. It makes you think about all those times that you're driving and a police car pulls up behind you, right? And for all of us, I think we've all been in that situation. It sends something through your body, regardless of the life that you try to lead for yourself. You could have all your papers, all your ducks in a row, but something still goes through you as a Black man when you see a police car behind you. And just, I fear for our young men that are out here, but I'm also proud of these young guys, especially the guys that are on the call now, because I see the work that they're doing. They're in the process of putting something together now that they want to go present to the mayor and Commissioner Lockwood and really start pushing from a youth perspective on things that need to be changed in our city.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you for addressing that. There's someone that we haven't heard too much from. I want to make sure that we have Maurice Hall from Motivation Unlimited. We had another question on here, and it was asked, and I'm trying to pull it up so I have the exact word. Do people trust media locally versus nationally?
Cool. I think that's an interesting question because I think the majority of us watch maybe local media more than national, but what it seems that the local media kind of follows whatever the national media is doing. So it's hard to say if people trust, I think I trust them both about the same, because it seems like everything national wise, kind of trickles down to the local media and it's kind of told the same way. Except in certain instances. So, it's hard to say if people trust that. I would say, me personally, I don't necessarily trust the local media any more than I do the national media. I think it's a matter of us doing our own research on what exactly is happening and real versus what we're being told and fed to us. Because at the end of the day, for local and national media, it's about ratings, it's about money, and they're going to tell the stories that's going to get the most eyes in the way that they want to tell it. So that's my thought.
Can I just give that a little perspective?
Yes.
Actually, that's a very good observation. Because on the national stories, we have local news crews here, and we know the local issues. A lot of times we are not familiar with specific national issues. So what you will see on our local news is actually a network correspondent presenting that national story that we insert into our local newscast. There are on many occasions where there's a national news story and we can give it a local perspective. And so that's where we would get into use one of our local reporters to work on a national story. But generally speaking, in our local newscasts, when you see those national stories, those are going to be presented by someone who is, say, a network correspondent, because they know the story, they know the topic, they know the ins and outs on it. Whereas, we're just here locally. So that's a very good observation of what you're seeing on our local news.
Thank you, Al. Happy to have you, your expertise in regards to that question itself. To Jason, the older Jason, or the seasoned Jason, that's what we're going with. I want to ask you that same question, though, to carry on in regards to trust from a media standpoint, just from an outside perspective.
Do I trust the local media more than national media? My opinion on media is always that it is about commerce. Everyone is trying to keep their publications alive. So I don't think that there's any inherent desire, aside from the bias of the people who are responsible for the news stories. But I think that everything is about generating revenue. So I think that they gravitate towards what more people want to watch, which is damage and destruction usually. But I think that on a local level, I'm not necessarily happy with the publications that we do have from our community. I know people are going to be upset with me for saying that. A lot of the issues that I've seen raised that are relevant to our community were raised by individuals from outside of our community. Partnership for the Public Good, Buffalo Rising, Investigative Post. These were the places where I learned about a lot of the things that were affecting our community when the publications from our community were not sharing those issues. So that's how I feel about local media. Again, on a national level, I feel like whatever draws eyes and ears is what they will report on. And just we as human beings are gravitated towards danger and destruction.
Thank you, Jason. In my experience, I know that from a local standpoint, a lot of that reason is because the news directors don't look like us. So we have people like Al. We've got some other people that have worked in news. Kevin is in here, Fadia, Cameron Owens are in here. We know Madison, we know Shannon. There's Angel just left, Karis Berger. There's more of us that are coming about to have an opportunity to kind of shine that light, but because of those people at the top who are really at the table, they're kind of deciding what's on the menu. And I think that has a major impact that from an inside view, most people may not understand that process. It's almost like corporate America in general. It applies in the news field as well. And it definitely applies to everything that we're discussing when it comes to these topics that many times people just don't feel comfortable talking about it. They just don't want to highlight these things. There was a question in here from the younger Jason too, and I want to direct it towards you, Lorenzo. And he asked about Colin Kaepernick. I'm gonna read it word for word. Colin Kaepernick made it clear that the world wasn't in a safe place when he had taken a knee. Why is it that there was a bigger impact on him losing his job and being neglected for speaking for the people that are being ignored? That's a great question, young man.
So why was it a bigger impact on him losing the job? Why was that bigger news? Is that what he's asking?
Yeah.
Well, let me see if I answer this the right way. I think it goes back to what we were just talking about, right? And so Cap is taking a peaceful protest, kneeling. He has other guys. You think about Eric Reed, Eli Harold. There's a ton of guys around the league that joined him during that time. And you think about who runs the league, right? The same people that own the news stations or own corporate America, old white men. And so they wanted to change the narrative. Initially, what's going on now, even with George Floyd and other incidents like that, they wanted to talk about some criminal history or something that doesn't even have to do with it. They made it about the flag because they're worried about their pockets and their dollars foremost and first. And so I have an interesting perspective because I sit on the NFLPA executive committee, and so I've actually had to negotiate sitting across from these dudes. And first of all, they look at me like, "What you doing in here, boy?" You know, they address players like that. They addressed Peyton Manning like that before, and so you can only imagine how they think about me or even a Kaepernick trying to use his platform to raise awareness about something that's plaguing his community, but then is affecting their pocketbook. Right. And so that's why initially they don't want to do nothing. They're trying to switch the narrative. How can we save money? How can we PR this thing and make it right for us? So they threw a little bit of money at it, right, through the Players Coalition, to try to make it go away. You know, obviously, Cap, in this whole situation, that's something different. But then him not getting a job, it just becomes, again, the news media. It becomes left versus right, essentially, just to kind of make it binary. He should have a job. He shouldn't have a job. And that's not even what the issue is, right? It's about social justice. They're trying to shift the narrative to now just make it just about Cap and take it off of what we should be talking about is how can the NFL impact the communities that, I don't know, 90% of their players come from, right? And so that's just another way of how they use the, you know, because Disney, NFL Network, ESPN, they all in cahoots. And so they're using their leverage. Even if you're a journalist in there, like we say, they may want to talk about it, but their boss is saying, you talk about it, you may lose your job, as we saw with Jamil Hill, right? And so that she's using as an example, like this is what's going to happen if you really step too far out of line. And so it's all those things that are working around it where they're trying to distract from the real situation that they have historically done when we try to rise up and express how we're feeling about social injustice in all aspects of our culture, where they're shifting narrative. And so they take it away from Kaepernick and social justice of whether or not he should have a job, which is not even why he was kneeling in the first place.
Thank you, Lorenzo. And there's so many different factors to go into it. Like I think about DeMaurice Smith, how important it is for DeMaurice Smith to be a representative for the players to make sure that it all comes to a wise man once told me, if you don't have a seat at the table, that means you're probably on a menu. So it's more about us getting to that table so that we can actually have a say. I want to go to Maurice Hall because Daniel, you put a comment in there that I think is just accurate, right? We need more people of color in media, education, in our police departments. So Maurice, Motivation Unlimited, what are your thoughts that it's going to, or how do you propose a solution may be so that we can see that as we move forward?
See that, you know, is interesting because so a little bit about me. I'm a writer, director, actor, and I remember my first film that I did when I was reaching out to producers who were white. You know, when I was telling them about my movie and what I was trying to do, and immediately they all said, "Oh, it's a black movie," right? And it was a negative connotation to it, to the point of, well, black movies don't really, do that well, or they're only going to do that well in their own community, which we all know is a lie. But that is what they sold me, to the point where I ended up changing one of the lead roles to a white girl, just because I thought at the time, and this was 2014. So at the time, so I'm thinking, oh man, I'm trying to get in the door, and the only people that I know are these white producers, and this is what they're telling me. And I would say that's one of my biggest regrets of my movie making experience, to the point where, now I think, you have to really look at it and reach out to other people. And what's been hard is, people in my experience, people of color that I've reached out to who I don't really have a relationship, haven't been as receptive to talking as the white counterparts that has. But I think you have to just go forward with pressing on toward putting ourselves in projects, in media, regardless of what people say, because at the end of the day, we have to look at the statistics and not just what people say. We know from all the different TV shows, all the different films out there, that not just we watch our own stuff, but our counterparts watch our own stuff as well. And, I remember seeing a quote of people saying, I wish people loved Black lives as much as they love Black culture. Mm-hmm. And it's 100% true. Like, how do you go to Paris and hear, Lil Wayne, but then you say, oh, well, Black Black culture doesn't sell over there. It's like, hold on, that something doesn't make sense here. And so I think for us, it's just a matter of continuing to understand that our value and using that to our advantage.
Thank you, Maurice. Something that comes to my mind, I do a lot of different live shows daily on Instagram and other platforms. And there was a young man who reached out to me. He said, why do people see us as Black men in such a negative light, as monsters, I believe is the term he said. And I pointed to something that was just over 100 years ago. And I don't know if anybody in there is familiar with Birth of a Nation, the original Birth of a Nation that came out. I think it came out between 1915 and 1918, which was a silent film that had blackface, that painted Black men as monsters, and understanding how impactful, as we are sitting here right now, the media is to the mind. I give that so much credence. It took us back years. It was so much progression that had been made, and it took us back so many years. So this is a question that I'll ask actually some of the young men, one of the young men from Breaking Barriers to answer. But what do you think it would take to eliminate the seeds that something like that planted? Because I'll even put this out there too, as a caveat. Even to this day, the director is regarded as one of the best directors in American history. That film itself, which was a silent film, which speaks volumes in that, no pun intended, is also by Rotten Tomatoes considered to be, it's like a 94, 96% on the Rotten Tomatoes list. So from one of you young men, I would love to hear your thoughts on how we could shift that mindset.
I'm not a film major, but I do know you're required to see the film if you want to be a film major. So eliminate that. I feel as if films have gotten to such a prestigious state now that you no longer have to watch that to all in it as like, oh, look at the technical marvel this film was. Well, all that technology is outdated. So at this point, you're just keeping up a racist facade just to keep it up. That's the first thing regarding that image. Another image, I feel as if the only time they ever show us in media is just a negative light. So you think about Buffalo, because I'm using from Buffalo, we'll use that as an example. Buffalo is spanned as 4 sections. Segregated city, very segregated. North, east, west, and south. It's North Buffalo and it's South Buffalo. So most poor whites live on South Buffalo, more richer, more echelon whites live on North Buffalo or the out towns. And then you got the east side and the west side. Not East Buffalo and West Buffalo, no, east side and the west side. Well, who does well on the east side? And the east side is nothing but a bunch of Black game makers who kill each other and kill, rob, steal. West side is you just replace Black with Hispanic. That's how the media presents us. The media never says in East Buffalo, it says on the east side of Buffalo. It already takes us out of the community as a whole. It's underfunded. They cut out our need for health food. They cut out our need for clean water. So as a result, we're planted with a bunch of food deserts and stuff like that. And that ties to us having more health disparities and more health problems, which feeds into another narrative that Black people are just unhealthy and quote unquote not as human as their white counterparts. They never lead into why we are violent when it comes to certain problems. We can't really express our emotions the same way that our white counterparts can. It has nothing to do with what we play or the avenues that we're presented with. I played football most of my life from the age of 5 up to 14, and I played for the GC Cowboys over in Dewey Park. I will tell you that a lot of the guys I grew up playing with, that they were nice, but the way we expressed emotion was mostly through anger, which is why we was playing football in the first place. Why do you express emotions through anger? Well, all my other emotions can't be expressed anywhere else in my community or anywhere else in my world. So if I'm playing a sport where I'm allowed to hurt somebody else, it's beautiful for me. It took me forever to understand how to express my emotions without getting angry. And I had anger problems. And if you talk to any of my friends, I was one of the nicest people they met. So if I got anger problems, imagine you dealing with somebody who doesn't have the structure that I had growing up. You're going to have even more unrivaled anger that you can't even talk to. Unpressed, unmatched. I also feel as if the way we're presenting the media is always negative to kind of offer like a gaslight and scapegoat. So whenever something wrong occurs to another community, it's always a finger that can be pointed back at us, like, well, you guys do this and that. Aforementioned is Black on Black crime. It's BS. whoever you live around is most likely to kill you. So if you're a white person live around white people, you're more likely to get killed by a white person. Same for Asians, same for Hispanics. But whenever you mention police brutality, all of a sudden the finger goes back to black on black crime. And then when you want to fix black on black crime any other time by issuing uh, solutions and stuff, all of a sudden that falls on deaf ears. So you want to end food deserts so people have healthy things to eat. No, we can't do that. You want to institute jobs. So poverty, which is the leading thing that creates crime. Oh no, we don't have the money or funds to do so. Yet, whenever it comes funds for improving the police department or funds to improve things to arrest and detain and brutalize the communities that you serve, you got funds for that. Tupac had a song quote that's always quoted: "They got money for war, but can't feed the poor." And I feel like that's pretty accurate when it comes in terms to our communities. We always seem to find funds when it comes to fixing and saluting the symptoms, but never when it comes to the actual problem. And whenever we ourselves come up with a solution to a problem, they always find a way to try to gaslight it and demonize it. So the civil rights movement, the entire thing was demonized. Every aspect of it, regardless if it was activism through the streets or it was simple activism through politics. Every single aspect of it was demonized. Right now, Black Lives Matter movement demonized. How come all lives don't matter? Well, if all lives matter, why aren't you in there fighting for us? Because our lives is included in it. So I feel as if people don't honestly care about what we have to say, and that's reflective on the people in our community. Me, the Breaking Barriers men, we just got off of another not live stream, we just got off another Zoom call, and one of our brothers was talking about how he didn't want to vote. His reason for not wanting to vote is because he felt as if voting solved nothing because his voice was never heard. Why is that? Because whenever we vote, our voice is never heard. Politics do nothing but lie to us. As far as I'm concerned, all they do is coon, shook, and jive until they get into office. And when they get into office, oh, yo, what about that thing you offered us? Oh, yeah, about that. You ain't getting that. Like that's all the Democrats do on a regular. And the Republicans, I have a little more respect for because I feel like they're a little bit more open or hatred towards us, or just their disdain at least. So you're stuck in between a rock and a hard place. You don't got to know what you're gonna do. This is what you get. And it falls back onto, I say all that to lead back into the quote unquote looting and rioting. Martin Luther King said that the riot is the language of the unheard. People want to talk about how he was against rioting, but don't mention that people rioted as soon as he was killed. Most hated man in America, as soon as he was killed, people went to the streets and started burning stuff down. No one talks about that for some reason, because our history isn't taught. Since our history isn't taught, people don't know our struggle. Since our struggle isn't known, people don't honestly feel as if we're human. And since people don't feel as if we're human, they're disconnected to our pain. Since they're disconnected to our pain regularly falls on deaf ears.
Jordan,
Man,
I love you.
right? Like I think we can snap, we can clap, we can salute. I mean, you hit on so many different topics right there. You pinpointed so many different things, and I know Lorenzo, you had raised your hand earlier. I want to pass it over to you, but thank you for that.
One more thing, and that's it. For my fault, Lorenzo.
You good?
I better win the Super Bowl this year. That's what I gotta say. But I also feel as if, because I know we're talking about black men right now, but I do feel as if as far as media goes, they try to drive a kind of a wedge between black men and women. Like a woman is killed, they'll talk about it for a couple of days, and then as soon as a man is injured, they'll switch all focus on it and eliminate the talking points from the women to try to drive like a wedge. A lot of my female friends have brought up to me that they feel as if black men don't support them the same way they support us. And I have to explain to them that the way you feel like that is because the media only focus on the death of black men because they view us as a bigger threat, not because we're more economically developed, not because we're smarter than you, but because it's a lot easier to present a man as a physical threat and a match to whatever it is they're trying to attain. It's a lot easier to present a man as a overall unhinged animal than it would be to present a woman. And I feel as if they eliminate the black female voices because they understand that black women are the driving factor and the driving force for the movement. And if they somehow figure out a way to segregate us from them, they'll cripple the movement. So I'm done on that. Go ahead,
King
Lorenzo.
talk. King talk. Lorenzo.
Oh yeah, man, that's impressive, Jordan, man. Man, keep leading, bro. Keep standing up. Keep bringing your friends along with you, because that's what we need. That's what we've lacked. I mean, just that knowledge and that foresight, and I think that energy that you have. I mean, don't allow the system to wear you down to where you lose focus. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep leading and rising above, man. That's impressive. I had raised my hand. I think Maurice, you had asked him about how can we change the representation, right? And so it always comes back, you try to figure out ways how to infiltrate. At the end of the day, it comes down to ownership. And I've been talking to a lot of people that have been on the front side, because we just dealt with the Rooney Rule in the NFL, right? So the same concept. How do you get more diversity? How do you get more black head coaches, GMs, scouts, people on the front side, marketing, business? And for me, it's so silly that the stuff they come up with, because at the end of the day, they have to be intentional about doing it, right? You have to do it as an owner. You're the team. You own it. And they always make it seem like it's something else, like it's not somebody out there. And so it always comes back to whether or not they want to do it or not. And so for me, I don't like we're begging for something. I know we have to have men that are able to figure out their way, like I have, and other brothers like Ben Watson is always out doing things, leveraging our privilege of being an NFL athlete to continue to force it. Obviously, I have a unique relationship with Kim, and I know some other of our Jerry, Micah Hyde, some other guys, Jermaine Edmonds, that are influencing her to hire more black representation in our own, the Bills organization. Because, the first thing the NFL wants to do is try to go and, okay, how can we help? Well, first of all, y'all need to be leaders in this aspect, right? And start hiring people that bring diversity, black men, black women into your organization. First of all, it's going to make your organization better, because they're going to come with some different ideas that your wild counterparts ain't even thinking about. And then it's obviously going to be better for hiring people moving forward. So that's one way. They have to be intentional, and we have to use our leverage to people that do to do it. Another way, talking to another one of my friends, we have to collectively as black people come together, similar to what we're doing here, but we have to be able to then cultivate and inspire the rest of our community to then come alongside of us. So then now we have the economic means of producing our own network, our own paper, our own movie, our own community center, where, like we just talked about, we don't have to go beg, the mayor or whoever, can you give us some money for this? And he was breaking it down. His name is Derek Toles, actually Maurice Hall. We all kind of from the same group. Because he lives in Warren, and so he was breaking it down. We have about 40% black people that live in Warren. Let's say that's about 16,000 people. 10,000 of them have jobs. And he was just breaking down what he just did over the last 9 months. He raised $1 million in Warren, Ohio. Median income is like $18,000. And he was just like, if you can inspire people and come up with a well thought out plan as far as how you can impact the community, being black folks, and having them maybe donate $10 a month, $120 a year, however you give it, fine. And it's not even thinking about people that can even do more. That over a 5-year period, you can raise $5 million. And so it has to start like that. And it may seem small, but 5 years from now, you have $5 million. I mean, that's essentially an athlete that just walked into your neighborhood, that's from your neighborhood, and you have all these funds, right? We don't have to push our kids and wait. Let's see who's going to make it, who's going to come back and give back. We have the power to do it right now, but we have to collectively come together, raise these monies. But it takes great leadership, right? Because we always have leaders that come in, and then for some way it shifts to about them. We think about the pastor, and then they use the money the wrong way. So it takes great leadership, a great plan, and then inspiring the community, which we have the ability to do. And so we're going to actually have a call, and hopefully I can share with you guys as we come up with this plan as far as how we can galvanize our community so we no longer have to go, please accept us, please make us matter. No, we doing this on our own. We don't need you. Now, if you want to help, cool, but I'm not coming to you begging. I'm about to do this myself. And then if you want to add on, that's fine. But it's going to take working on both ends, I think, making the powers that be understand that y'all need to be intentional about bringing us into the organization so that we can be a part of that. And then we also want to have our own as far as ownership And that's the only way you really kind of can create change on either end, depending on which way you want to go about doing it.
Ownership. And so I know we got Dorian, we got Daniel. What I wanted to share was I think about two people. Daniel, you mentioned LeBron earlier, but I think about Jordan. I think something we forget is that Michael Jordan is the only majority owner in the NBA and NFL, but he's Michael Jordan. It wasn't an average player who just so happened to get to the NBA and understood the business. No, you had to be Michael Jordan in order to sit at that table. And I think somebody else talked about how the media can kind of depict to make us separate each other, because the conversation always, oh, Michael, LeBron. How about they're both great in their own ways? And we all play a role in the history of our world, and we have different roles. Where Mike's role was his, from the business side, he did things differently so that he can get to the table, so that he can be an owner. But it should really make us all uncomfortable as a country that you got to be Michael Jordan to own an NBA team. You got to be the greatest. Even though Brown is better, you got to be the greatest, though. Oh, you got to be the greatest. We don't got to talk about that right now. But it's just interesting. I want to get to Dorian, and then I want to get over to Daniel. I know I missed some hands earlier.
Sorry, I had myself muted. For black males portrayed in media, right? For like how can we change the narrative? For me, I think it starts with self. I think pushing a certain narrative amongst ourselves in the community, and also, in a sense, validating and accepting certain things from people outside the community as well. And the other thing is celebrities. I think I'm gonna take some of Dr. Cornel West's words, being that they're peacocks. There's a lot of money and jewelry. There's a lot of flashing of twerking and all the things that they portray us as. Some celebrity show, particularly in entertainment. There has to be something done with that. And then there's a certain untruthfulness and like a narrow viewpoint with the celebrities as well, and amongst ourselves in the community. And I think breaking away from that in media, especially like, the social media being Instagram and Facebook, Snapchat, or whatever, fighting the push that, we all eat chicken and love it, the watermelon, the sexualizing of our young ladies. I feel like that has to be heavily involved in our change for there to be a narrative change in general for African Americans and people of color.
Thank you, Dorian. Daniel.
So, sir, Dwayne just asked me, could he chime in real quick? So I'm gonna let him go before me.
I just wanted to mention one thing. I personally feel that in order for anything to change within a system that's already corrupt, you have to change and you have to get rid of that corrupt person. How can you expect change for somebody who wasn't willing to change? Why be willing to change now because you see other people changing? That means that you never had it in your heart to want to change, or you never had it in your mind that things need to be different. So for the the NFL owners who are currently saying, nothing's need to be done, everything's fine, just go with the flow. Those are the people that's not willing to change. Those are the people who needs to get replaced, so people who will, introduce change into a new life can step into their place and take their job. Because right now we don't need people who's going to stop us from progressing. We need people who's going to be allies and actually going to stand on the front line to help us out.
Thank you, Dwayne.
So I love everything that Jordan said. I love everything that Lorenzo said. It definitely starts with ownership. We also have to be able to infiltrate those spaces. Black has always been seen as fearful. Even when we just talk about the color black, it's seen as, something that people are afraid of. It's seen as aggressive. Black people are seen the same way, and that's has to do with the way that media portrays us, right? I was listening to D.L. Hughley the other day on CNN, and he said something that kind of resonated with me. He said the idea of us is much more impactful and fearful than the reality of us. So, I say that to really say, I'm not a fool, and I don't think we're going to change the perspective of how society sees people of color, right? Especially Black people, because it's been ingrained for so long, right? one of the things that we try to do within Breaking Barriers is just we try to change the narrative of those young men. We try to change the narrative of the people in our community, because if we start to think differently, see ourselves differently, we'll behave and move differently. So I think it really starts with youth leadership, and I think, you know, Jordan really kind of exhibited what that looks like today, and really listening to our young people and really encouraging them to go and infiltrate these spaces and pushing them to think about, you know what, I can go own a media station, but then we also have to create the opportunities and the avenues where they can start to, you know, get these internships in these different places that don't have a lot of people that look like us working in those media outlets.
Thank you, Daniel. We've only got 3 minutes left, but I wanted to give the older Jason a chance to chime in on this conversation.
I think that one of the best things that happened is that the decentralization of media, and by that I mean the availability of us all to become our own journalists with this device that we carry in our pocket. So I think that continuing to let young folks know that they can make a change just by what we're doing here, going live, and having this representation of all these incredible people that you see in front of you, and to continue to share stories, even if the media doesn't come out to see. You can catalog that and you can share that with the world with the device you have in your phone. So I think that as far as us being able to continue to change how we see each other, because there's one thing that I read a study on this years ago when I was in college, and there's something called the Stereotype Threat. And I won't get into it. I know we only said we have a few minutes. I would like to encourage everybody to look that up and put that in Google, Stereotype Threat, and how that affects how we see ourselves and how others see us as well. But I think that we can begin to see some of the different the different levels of our capabilities, our talents, how extraordinary we are if we keep sharing our own stories.
Thank you, Jason, and thank you for being conscious of the time as well. Motivation Unlimited, can you give us 60 seconds of motivational advice and inspiration as we move forward and we hop off this conversation?
I think I think we're getting closer to the place where we want to be. I think, you know, we as Black people have always been talking about, you know, our rights and us, and I feel like our white counterparts are finally starting to gain an empathy and not necessarily understand fully, but trying to move forward with us. And I think because of that, it puts us in a good position as we continue to move forward and have those actionable items of being able to take the control that we should have, that we do have, and utilizing it to getting things done that really affect us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you, every single one of you, for joining in on this conversation. I'm a very spiritual person. I always believe whether two or more are gathered in his name. So I hope that the conversation, the topics, the solutions, the different observations that we all had and displayed in this convo, we can all take it to the next step. So each one teach one. So if each and every one of us can just spread that light, we're already pushing the movement and we're already chasing the narrative. Thank you again, Jamil Cruz. Thank you to Madison Carter and the NABJ for allowing us all to be a part of this, allowing me to moderate it as well. I want to thank you all again, Lorenzo, Al, I'm going to say everybody here, Cam Owens there, Charles Jackson, Sheldon, Dorian, Daniel, Motivation Limited, Maurice Hall, Dwayne, Jason, Xavier, Kevin, Jason. Thank you all for joining us in this conversation. I'm gonna pass it over to Jamil, but I think we made a step, and it takes one spark to get the flame going.
Absolutely. And gentlemen, thank you guys so much for being a part of this conversation today. This is a really important conversation to have. And as we stated earlier, it's a very timely conversation with all of the unrest that's happening across the country, and how we as men of color are often being depicted in the media. It's important to have those conversations about how we can shift the narrative. And each and every one of you guys just have to take my hat off to you, because in your own respective way, in your own line of work, you guys are definitely doing that and shifting that narrative for boys and men of color. So we want to thank you guys for that. Also, we just want to remind people that this is just a part of a nationwide conversation that's happening with members of the media, people of color in the media all across the country today, for the Black Male Media Project. You know, if people want to learn more and people want to find out how they can get further engaged, just hit the hashtag Inspire Black Men on Twitter, and then you can find out, you know, where other conversations are being had and take part in those conversations, because they will be taking place all throughout the day today and moving forward as well. So, so again, gentlemen, thank you so much for all that you do, especially to the young men on the panel today. Thank you guys. We applaud you guys. You know, Daniel and I were talking offline in the chat, and just talking about how proud these young guys just make us. You know, so we certainly appreciate you guys, and to Maurice and Lorenzo and Al, Jason. Again, thank you guys so much, and of course Daniel, and of course my guy Sir Aimezing. Thank you so much for moderating this discussion today, and we look forward to having continued conversations like this in the future. So with that, you know, we want to thank everybody for tuning in. Thank everybody for the questions that they had, and we just again look forward to continuing these conversations.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Stay safe, Black men.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
All right.